Hi, everyone. My name is Stephen Bagwell, and I would love to welcome you to the second edition or second installment of the 2025 Great Decisions Speaker Series, which is an initiative of the Foreign Policy Association, sponsored locally by the World Affairs Council of St. Louis and UMSL Global, the international office at the University of Missouri, St. Louis. UMSL Global has been a partner and sponsor of this speaker series for many years, and it's my pleasure to welcome you all here today. The World Affairs Council is a nonprofit, nonpartisan organization with local chapters across the U.S. It is a 501c3 nonprofit, nonpartisan member organization that connects the citizens of St. Louis region to the world. Founded in 1948, their mission is to offer programs that promote understanding, engagement, relationships, and leadership in world affairs. They rely on donations from the community, and they have annual memberships available, which helps them promote and sponsor great events like this, as well as others. We are pleased to welcome Dr. Sneha Rajan, who's currently a legislative liaison with the St. Louis County Executive's Office. She received her PhD from Durham University in 2016 on foreign policy, U.S. public opinion, and U.S. domestic politics. She's served as a consultant for the St. Louis Mosaic Project and as a legislative analyst in the Missouri House of Representatives. And she's here to tell us a lot about the impact of various diaspora groups, but especially the local Indian community here in St. Louis. So I will happily turn it over to her and look forward to an enlightening presentation and some good Q&A afterwards. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Stephen. I just want to start by giving you a background on my path here to St. Louis. That will give you some idea why I am here to speak about this topic, because I've been an immigrant and lived in many different places, and I feel like I have lived all the ups and downs, many of it. So I grew up in India, and for my master's and PhD, I went to England, and like Stephen just said, I received my master's and PhD from Durham University. That's where I met my husband, who is American. Who is now a college counselor. So he understands the importance of choosing the right college. And we got married in New Jersey, so we lived there for a little bit, and then we lived in India for about 4 years, and that's where my children were born. And so I remember at that time applying for their U.S. citizenship and all the hurdles and challenges of doing that. And we lived in the UAE during the pandemic, and that was a very unique experience. And then we moved to St. Louis in July of 2021, and I worked for the Mosaic Project, which was a great experience to work with a lot of leaders in this community. And then I taught politics and African American history in St. Louis Community College. That was the very important experience for me, because when I came to St. Louis, I didn't know anybody, and we moved here because my husband had started working here as a college counselor for boarding school. And so that experience working with the students at the community college, I felt gave me some insights into all the many challenges we have in this area, and also a lot of very encouraging qualities in people here. And then I worked for the Missouri House of Representatives, but I really did love St. Louis so much that I decided to commute daily. That is a 254-mile commute daily. And at the end of it, I realized I really do love St. Louis. And so I decided to stay here and started working for the county exec as his legislative liaison. All of that is to say that I understand the challenges of being an immigrant, going to a new place, trying to build a life there. There are very real challenges to it. But in my experience, I will say that St. Louis is one of the most welcoming places I've ever been to. And we'll go through the slides and we'll see some background and details on that. Are you able to see this? Okay. So we'll talk about or the history of immigration to the United States by Indian Americans. Then we'll discuss how Indian Americans are the fastest growing foreign-born population in Missouri. This is important because we did have an immigration problem in Missouri and even in the St. Louis area just 25 years ago. And a lot of efforts were put into improving this situation, and we see the results now. And international students, of course, international students are a big part of the immigrant population in our state. And then we'll look at the contributions of the Indian American community and the challenges that community faces, and also we'll end with a discussion on the resources available. So, Indian immigrants in America, we see recorded history of them coming to the United States, to America in the 1700s as slaves and servants with the English East India Company. And then we see a significant immigration to the United States and change in the federal policies toward immigration in 1965, where we abolished national origins quotas. And that, in light of the civil rights movement, we see is a positive outlook and approach to immigration. Then we see in 1990, the Immigration Act increased the employment-based visas, which we see is very important to the Indian American population here. But there were also some complications brought about by that legislation. We see per country caps, and that created backlogs in processing green cards. And one very important result of that legislation was the H-1B visa program, which we know is a program that has attracted a lot of highly skilled professionals from India and other countries, especially Asian countries. And we see here, so in Missouri, especially in the St. Louis area, we were seeing a lack of economic growth in the 2010, 2011, those years. And at that time, Jack Strauss from St. Louis University had done a study. I think it's a 53-page study where he analyzes the economy and makes recommendations that would help improve the economic situation in the St. Louis region. And one of his recommendations included having a program to promote immigration because he believed that there was a direct correlation between increasing immigrant population and economic growth. And it was in the aftermath of that we see several projects, including the St. Louis Mosaic Project, was established, and there were deliberate efforts to make the area more welcoming to immigrants, provide resources, um, have uh, cultural events, that all of the initiatives to make immigrants feel welcome. And in 2012, um, we saw that like 4.5% of St. Louis's population was foreign, and in large cities across the country, that number was closer to 18%. So Jack Strauss's study basically was saying that we need to get the number of immigrants up to improve the economic conditions in this region. And we see that also a way to keep companies here. Sometimes you do have to hire people from other countries. And especially, we see that a lot of Asian immigrants come to America because they're highly skilled in IT and other STEM fields. And of course, there are costs to immigration, um, and it's often a very important issue during presidential elections. And even in this state, we see that immigration is a very contested issue in during election years. Um, but we do need immigration because um, when immigrants enter the labor force, we do see increase in productive capacity of the economy, and it does raise GDP. And we do see a positive trend nationally, and even in the bi-state area, we see that with increased immigration, we have seen growth. But um, it's not without cause, because in Missouri we see large numbers of Indian immigrants filling shortages in IT or medical fields, and um, there are that benefits research institutes, that benefits companies, um, and there is of course competition that the native population will have to face when you have highly skilled foreign population, and that's a bigger debate. But by and large, when you look at literature, there is compelling evidence that leads us to believe that immigration does indeed contribute to economic growth. And as a labor economist, Pia Orenes, she is the vice president of the Federal Reserve Bank of Dallas. She says that immigration has net benefits. The fact that it has some costs is not a reason to bar it, but rather to manage it. And that's another thing that we hear during presidential debates, that whether you want to reduce immigration, or allow more people in, it just what we have now is a very broken system that needs to be fixed. How we're going to fix it, that's we'll see with the new administration. Um, so another thing, so here we see right now, after so many regional initiatives, we see that Indian-born population by 2020 in the St. Louis region has grown 194% from what it was at the turn of the millennium. And that's a significant growth, and it didn't just happen on its own. It was a lot of effort put in by a lot of organizations, the local government, and we do see the results. And I mean, why would people move here? Of course, people move where they're welcome and where they have opportunities. And when you have local governments, local businesses supporting and welcoming immigrants, you do see a trend in increased immigration. And also, another interesting aspects about the Indian immigration to the St. Louis region is there's a lot of secondary migration. So we have folks from big cities of New York, from California, moving back or moving to the St. Louis area because cost of living here is lower, and especially in the St. Louis area, we do have good educational opportunities. We have good schools. We have good universities, and we do see that immigration does benefit the economy and the native-born population. And I'm going to international students. So this is very interesting. So place of origin, we see India 57.4%, followed by China is 17.1% of our students. And here we see estimated international student expenditure that's over $1 billion in this state. And that's a significant amount, and it's not just the tuition or the money they spend here, but it is also the cultural experience that they bring in, and also it's very important for native-born population to have those connections and those networks. So just a day ago, during a debate at the state legislature, one of the members, state representatives from the St. Louis area, was remarking that the fact that he went to a school which had international students helped him develop a good network, which when he completed his education and started a business turned out to be very useful, because he had contacts with folks from all over the world, and that it was not just an experience during his college, but that has helped his business, and is something that he thinks is valuable, and I absolutely agree. And here we see universities, University of Central Missouri, the highest number of students. We see WashU, St. Louis University, Webster, Missouri, University of Missouri, Kansas City, and in St. Louis area, a lot of the immigrant population we see are international students, and so here you see from India, we have a significant number of students coming here, and also a lot of these students do leave the St. Louis area if there is lack of opportunity, or if there are visa concerns, it would be impossible for them to stay. And so those are things that the local government and local business chambers are working on, and to create opportunities. So it is not that we are just educating them and they don't have any opportunity once they're done with their college education here. But this is a challenging new environment with the policies of the federal government. As we know, international students do pay higher tuition, and now with the change in federal government policies, we do see the White House advocating for America First policies, and we see that reflected in the State Department's policies. And that is definitely concerning if you're an international student who wants to come to America to do a STEM program. And part of the reason to do a STEM program is also to have your OPT and have the opportunity to stay here. Now, if there are concerns about the opportunity to have your visa or OPT options, if they are in peril because of change in policies, then that would be of great concern if you are an international student. So these are things that we'll see how it develops as the year goes. And next we see contributions of the Indian American community. This is something that I'd worked on putting together when I worked as a consultant for the Mosaic project. We have a lot of healthcare professionals, immigrants from India, from China, working as healthcare professionals, and we see uh, that's a very important uh, um, aspect of their contribution toward the native population in this region. And we also see during COVID lockdown, there were a lot of initiatives. There were a lot of uh, food drives, a lot of help, care products distributed in this region, and a lot of local Indian community groups had worked together to support a lot of initiatives to support the folks in this region. And we also see cultural contributions. The St. Louis Symphony Orchestra has worked with Indian artists, and we see a lot of collaborative work, and that enhances the experience for the native population here. And we also see a lot of interfaith community development initiatives. The the mosque in St. Louis, the Hindu temple, they all have initiatives to feed people, to help support different causes. And if you are a new person here in this area and you don't know where to start, those interfaith community groups are definitely a good start. There are lots of opportunities to volunteer, to help, and it's something that people do as a family. And a lot of the Indian immigrants who are here have family here, and so that's something that's appealing to people from the Indian community. And we see a lot of restaurants here, and people, of course, I think one of the first things you think about India is the food and maybe yoga. And we have a lot of yoga programs, and there are many volunteer or free yoga programs that if you look up, you'll see. And also, there are lots of Indian assets. That's something, a map we put together. It's on the St. Louis Mosaic Project website. It's a long list of everything from restaurants to art classes that you can go to. We've put a list together so that people can access it, and especially students who are new to the area. There are lots of opportunities and a good community support system here in the region. Challenges, of course, when you have such a big number of Indian Americans here on visas, student visas, or otherwise H-1B visas. There's real concern when there are dramatic changes in the federal government's policies, or concerns that there could be significant changes to the visa policies. And also, even during COVID, several consulates were closed, or staff were significantly reduced. So in places like India, there were 400 to 500 days processing times for B1, B2 visa, which is visa to travel to America as a tourist or for business. And that means if you had family here, and if your folks from India were wanting to visit, they'll have to wait a few years just to get the visa. So practically, those things are very difficult, and we see the delay in processing sometimes mean that there's no point in getting the visa. So we were talking about a student who was graduating, and the family needed to visit. But if there's a 3-year delay to get the visa, or a 2-year delay to get the visa, then you probably have to start the visiting visa application process before somebody starts their master's program. So there are puzzling practical challenges like that. And then now we also see um, a culture of fear and uncertainties with the lack of freedom of speech in institutions of higher learning. And we see the visa revocation and even arrest of green card holders. And that creates a very fearful experience, which will be very effective in forcing people to self censor. Um, and that's concerning because places of higher learning uh, is where you debate and you learn and you grow and you disagree. And so those policy shifts and the shift in attitude toward international students is concerning, um, and we'll have to wait and see how that would impact enrollment and uh, in the coming years. And next, we'll talk about the numbers. So now India is the most populous country in the world, surpassed China. That also means it has one of the highest number of immigrant population spread all over the world. Um, and we see that there's a significant number of overseas Indians. Um, According to Pew Research, about 2/3 of Indian Americans are immigrants, while 34% are US born. And we see that a good majority of those live in 4 states: California, Texas, New Jersey, New York, which isn't a surprise, um, because people tend to go to places where there are more immigrants. And that was one of the concerns with the St. Louis region, is that in the beginning, in 20, 2000 and 2010, during those periods, we had very little foreign born population here. And that would make it harder to attract people, because we see more Indians moving to places there where there are others. So you got to start somewhere, and they did make a lot of effort at the local government level to have those initiatives to support the foreign-born population. We do see the results, and we do see big increase in the percentage of Indian immigrants to this region, and that's thanks to all these support that we see from the community here. Um, and we see the median income among Indian American households in the U.S. was 145,000 in 2022. That is a very high number. Um, uh, and why, though, is an important thing, right? Because in India we do have millions of people living in poverty, and we do have a lot of challenges in getting highly skilled Indian students to good jobs. But somehow in America, we see this very high median income and very successful Indian population. Like, whatever scale you use, if you're asking yourself, like, are Indian immigrants to the US successful? They are. Whatever scale you use, they are definitely successful. Well, maybe not happiness. I don't know about that. But um, I don't know if STEM folks are necessarily happy. I don't know. We'll have to ask them. But I will say, in terms of career growth, in terms of the income they make, it is very, very high. And one reason, the very important reason, is education, because most Indians who come here, who are on all these uh, data that we collect, they're mostly people who moved here um, with very high level of education. And of course, in the United States, if you're educated and if you're skilled, especially if you're skilled in STEM fields, you can um, make a lot of money, and that's reflected in that median income. And another thing would be, so how is it that Indians are so very highly educated here? One thing is that there is big importance attached to education. It's not just in the Indian community. You see that across Asian communities, that education is considered very important, and we see that education giving them the opportunity in America, which they probably wouldn't have in India. And another thing is communal wealth. So we've talked about this. I actually talked about this once with my former boss, Betsy Cohen, and we were talking about it, and why are the Indians so successful here? And partly it's also communal wealth, that family supporting uh, family support during your years of education, and also multi-generational support in wealth building, because in majority of the cases, people do get support from their family to the extent that they can. The family would support a young person, and that's very different from the native born population. So we do see that those traditional um, aspects of family dynamic definitely helping these immigrants. And another thing would be, we have to look at the resources. So, like we discussed, there are lots of resources available here, and it was a very intentional effort from local business leaders, from local government, and you see lots of support groups in the universities in the area to welcome and support international students. The St. Louis Economic Development Partnership is a um, private public partnership to develop the St. Louis region, the city and the county. They have a lot of projects that are specifically aimed at improving the immigrant experience. The Mosaic Project is part of that. We have the International Institute, which also, unfortunately, because of um, the cuts in the federal funding, had to um, remove a lot of their programs. But they do a lot of great work in the community. And then we have Welcome Neighbors St. Louis, which is a great initiative and has a lot of volunteer opportunities to support refugee groups, immigrants in the area. And then we have the Office of New Americans to welcome immigrants to the St. Louis City area. That's a great initiative by the mayor there. And we see, if you go to their website, you'll see they have lots of opportunities and just a source of support if you're a new person in this area and don't know where to start. These are very, very good organizations. And then we have faith-based groups. So like we already discussed, the mosque, the Hindu temple, many churches here, lots of organizations that support people from feeding folks, clothing folks, to helping them navigate the legal process. And then if you're looking specifically for legal support, there's the MICA Project, there's Monarch Immigrant Services. A lot of these offer very low cost or free support to refugees and immigrants in need. And um, if you want to support the community, you can get involved with any of these organizations and do your part. And for me, I have to say that my life in St. Louis has definitely been a very formative and empowering experience for me, and it's been very good to me so far, and good for me. And as a woman and as a woman of Indian origin, I will say that this is one of the most welcoming uh, places I have ever lived. And I hope that when we have new people come here, we will have the opportunity to support them the best we can. And that's all I have now. And I will take any questions.
Great. Thank you so much for that really informative presentation. I'll take advantage of my position as moderator to ask a couple of questions first. One, do you still get the what high school did you go to question?
Oh, yes. But then I'm like, I wasn't here.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I still get that question too as a non-native St. Lucian. Yeah, so glad to hear you still get it too, and I'm sure that they look just as confused when you tell them that you're not from here as they do when I do. Um, a slightly, I guess, more serious question. You know, there has been a shift in policy and a shift in rhetoric towards immigrants under the current administration, but even before this administration, like over the last 10 to 15 years, it really seems that immigration has become a more and more salient issue to a lot of people, and not always in a good way. So I'm curious about whether or in what ways the Indian American community has been particularly targeted. So with Latin America, we hear about the worst coming in from Latin America, gang members, etc. There's a big amount of hostility towards China, and that often spills over towards Chinese immigrants. There's been recently, as you mentioned, a backlash against many Middle Eastern students, especially immigrants and students, both. But I've seen a lot less in the media and in the press about Indian and other South Asian immigrants. So are there parts of the Indian and Indian American community that are being targeted, and in what ways are they being targeted?
I will say, my husband is a college counselor. The reason I brought that up is also because I hear about this, the concerns in the admissions um, world, that students are worried. If you're an international student who is going to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars, are you going to be sent back in the middle of it? Are you going to have work visa? That is a genuine concern, and we do see that this year. Already students who've been accepted to universities are concerned if they should have a backup option outside of the United States, because if there is a sudden change in the policy here, what are you to do then? And so that's really worrying. But this is a very new set of circumstance that we're dealing with. But so far, when you see um, academics being sent away from the airports, denied entry, even Europeans. It's concerning. Just because you criticized an administration, you are not welcome to participate in a conference here is not something that we had experienced in recent times as a public um, debate. Like freedom of speech, like most of the time we all agree, at least in institutions of higher learning, that there should be freedom of speech. But that's definitely concerning. And to specifically about Indian students, we haven't seen it the same way. The rhetoric against the Chinese, we haven't seen that yet. But we'll have to wait and see. What in the case of Chinese students, when you have the vice president expressing concerns that there are too many international students. Yeah, that's a very concerning way of talking about international students. So we will see. And for Indian students, that there are other options we see people are looking into outside of the United States, and that's very worrying. Yes.
There's a couple of questions coming in from the audience, so I'll circle back to some of mine. So the city has a plan to increase population through immigration, or has had a plan to do that. Does St. Louis County have a similar plan? Is this a broader regional effort? Who are the So can you talk through a little bit more of the collaboration that's happening to try to draw in more immigrants to St. Louis?
Yes. So, as we were saying, in the early 2000s, we had difficulty in growing our economy here. And that's when we had that study that Jack Straw of SLU did to study the economic conditions here, what can be done. And he made a whole lot of recommendations. And part of that was one solution to this crisis with our economy would be to have more immigrants. Because if you have highly skilled folks coming here, we can have more business here, and that will help grow the region, was one of the theories. And it was the direct results of that the local governments here in the county and in the city had different programs, and the Mosaic Project was set up after that study. And the Mosaic Project is funded by the St. Louis Economic Development Partnership, which is a partnership between the city and the county, and also has support of the business community here. So that was one thing that was done. And in the last few years, we see in St. Louis City, the mayor had opened the Office of New Americans, that specifically to develop and support the immigrant population in that area. And here, when you see, local government officials, they're always welcoming of the immigrants. And you see every kind of religious festival or cultural festival celebrated here, and it's encouraged. It's a different thing in Jeff City. Um, there are some concerning rhetoric there too. But in the city, in the county, you do see support from the local government and organizations. And we've seen so many private businesses celebrating Holi, celebrating Diwali. And that's just a way to make people feel welcome. And we see the results. We see 193% increase since turn of the millennium, and that's a significant increase. And then part of that is because people are making the effort to welcome people here. Yeah.
Great, thank you. Um, so you have a background in policy between being a legislative liaison and your PhD and everything else. So I'm going to put you a little bit on the spot here. As somebody who has gone through the system, what are some, we've heard for decades the immigration system is broken, and you mentioned some of the visa issues and things like that. What are some more specific policies that you would like to see adopted to help fix the system? I know there's not one silver bullet, so if you've just got like one or two or maybe three that immediately spring to mind, specific action items that if you could say this would help fix the system, allow for quicker processing or things like that.
Mhm.
What are some things that you would like to see?
Well, definitely quicker processing, because that's a very difficult situation that a lot of people are in when they come here. So I came here, and then when I applied for my green card, I had to wait. Um, I can't recall, but close to a year to have it processed. That means I cannot work here until that's processed. That's a very long time. And because my husband already had a job here, it was we could live off of one person's salary, but practically that's very difficult for most people. And the visa delays, we had discussed before, that when my parents were looking to apply, it was 2 years to just get the visa appointment, and that's a very long time. By that time, 2 summers have gone. And I imagine that would be very difficult for people to be away from their families, and like practical challenges. And um, I feel like also, not so much the Indian students, but I think with the Chinese students, I think it's important that we're more welcoming. And how we talk about immigration. It's very difficult to come here as an immigrant, and it's we have these international students who contribute, like we see, billions into the U.S. economy and over a billion in Missouri. And so they're a significant source of revenue. And the people who stay here, they contribute as taxpayers. And so it's important to be welcoming. And I think we're doing a good job in the city and the county with that. But there are concerns with the rhetoric in the state government and also federal government. Yes.
Is um the wait time for visas, is that primarily a staffing issue? Is that a process issue? Is that a background check and local investigation issue? What do you have any sort of inclination as to what the holdup is and why it would be a 2-year wait time to even get an appointment?
I can't speak to that, but in my experience, when COVID happened, that was given as a reason why a lot of consulates were closed to process. They stopped processing B1, B2 visas, but student visas and work related visas were still processed during that time. So, sometime between 2020, I don't want to speak um, if it's not accurate, but sometime between 2021 and 2023, a lot of consulates were not processing in India. They were not processing B1, B2 visas. So that created a definite 2-year gap. And then all the backlog. And that was, yeah,
Okay,
difficult. Yeah.
thank you. Um, we have a time for a few more questions. If any come in from the audience, there is a plug for a resource, the Indian Medical Group of Greater St. Louis, uh, for recent international medical graduates. And so feel free to check out the Q&A section for that. I'll leave that up for a little bit before I clear it. But in the meantime, I think what I will do, without any additional questions from the audience, is I will give you the last word. So is there any big question just came in? So before I give you this question, at the end of this, I'll give you an opportunity for the last word and just any sort of big picture takeaways, things you would like us to walk away from, reasons for optimism, anything else like that. But before we get to the last word, are there any programs or support from St. Louis County that will help with businesses owned by Indian immigrants?
Um, if you want specific information, you can reach out to the World Trade Center St. Louis. They have staff there that help with immigrants setting up business here and also with export import. So definitely please reach out to the World Trade Center. That'll be a good source.
Great, thank you. And then another question, are there any specific things teachers could do to make sure Indian students feel welcome in the classroom?
I think, in my experience here, this is a very welcoming place, the county and the city. My students go to the public school here in South County, and I have only good things to say. They have very few minority students in that school, but the teachers always, whenever it's holiday time, they talk about all holidays, all different kinds of celebrations, like from Hanukkah to Eid to Diwali, and then they do little craft things in class, and that makes everybody feel welcome and celebrated. And I really don't have any complaints. Like as a parent, I feel like this is a great place for children because you are valued as an immigrant. And I think it's just like in your everyday life, like be considerate. that's whether it's immigrants or just a human you interact with. That's all. I think we have a very good situation in the county and the city where the leaders are very welcoming of minorities and supportive of the initiatives to support the minority groups. So yeah.
Great. Thank you so much for that response. So That exhausts the questions that are in the chat box. So, last word. Any reasons for optimism? Important points to take away? Yeah, thank you so much for being here.
Oh, thank you. I will say, I really do love living here, and in my experience, um, there are people here that are very supportive. Like I said, when I started my career here, it was after almost a year of waiting for my green card, and then at that point, you don't know where to start. And I remember one of the events I went to at Boeing, where it was um a mentee mentor event where they were giving advice to young people on how to approach your career choices. And I remember one of the speakers saying that you have to say yes to opportunities. You have to start somewhere, and that's a very difficult for a lot of immigrants, because when you come from a foreign place, you might be a doctor there, you might be a lawyer there. I actually have a law degree, but that's a foreign law degree, so I cannot practice here. So I can't be, but I am a legislative liaison now for the county exec. And I did, I was an analyst at the Missouri House of Representatives, advising them on state laws. Um, but you have to start somewhere. I cannot be practicing here, and I think that's a very big challenge that a lot of folks in the medical field and immigrants face. But I think you have to say yes to whatever opportunities, and I think the those will give you the opportunity to network. And I feel, my career here has really been possible because of the connections that I had when I worked for the World Trade Center for the Economic Development Partnership. Because Betsy Cohen, as you all know, is one of the great leaders we have in our area, and she's worked a lot to support the immigrant population here. And for me, in my personal experience, when I didn't know what to do, she was the one who recommended me. And so there are people here who are willing to support you. And I feel like as an immigrant, this is really a good place to be. And also, I was speaking to a friend the other day, and we were talking about, how in India, as a woman, I don't think I would have such a privileged position. And I feel like this is a great place to be a woman, and a great place to be a woman from India. And I encourage people to, consider this uh, as a place that they would raise their family. And I only have good things to say. And yeah.
Great. Well, thank you for that happy note at the end there. I want to thank you once again for being part of the Great Decisions Speaker Series for this year. And also thank you to our audience and our participants, those of you who asked questions and engaged and showed up and listened. Thank you for being part of the 2025 Great Decisions Speaker Series. As a reminder, this is sponsored by the World Affairs Council of St. Louis and the International Office at the University of Missouri St. Louis, UMSL Global. The World Affairs Council is a nonprofit, nonpartisan, 501c3 nonprofit that relies on memberships and donations to continue to put out great events like this. So please consider becoming a member today. With all of that said, thank you all for being here. Thank you, Dr. Rajan, once again for your presentation and your engagement with the Q&A. And we look forward to seeing you next month for our next event on international climate collaboration.